Is work providing us with freedom? So does work actually give us freedom? Because work means money, money means income, means that we are able to do whatever it is that we want to do. And the question, of course, is how happy are we doing it? Well, the whole goal, of course, behind working is that you do something that you're good at, and other people need you because of your skills. That totally makes sense. And in the process, we get rewarded. So we give something, we get something. But what if that whole process is disrupted? And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about work. So I made this framework just recently. It's called Freedom, because I believe that if things are done right, we should experience freedom at work. Freedom because we like what we are doing, freedom because people are not hovering over us, freedom because we can get to grow doing what we are doing. I mean, that's what it started out with, right? We went to school and then we got a certain education and then we got specialized in a certain direction. Now, I know all of this makes it sound so easy. And let's start with the very first thing, which is, but what if that specialization is not something that can be used? Now, getting back to my own background, when I started working, my background was partially actually IT, which was more coincidence than anything else. And it also was the Academy of Arts. So my mom always said, you're going to be a designer. And well, it made sense. I'm good at drawing. And especially when I take the time to do stuff, I can be very precise at things. But then, of course, the question is, but is there a job for those kind of things? And I remember going to some agency and I said, okay, I've got two choices. I either redo my year at the Academy of Arts and then some extra. And then I'm probably going to work for someone, whereas they say you need to create your own style and do things your own way and come up with your own ideas. And I was like, that sounds like the opposite when I go and start to work somewhere. And then there was the option of starting in the IT, start at the bottom and then climb up. And the latter actually happened. I wasn't the only one. This company existed of all those people, students who either hadn't finished their education, not because they didn't want to, but for some other reason, and who were eager to go do something. And their idea was that we wouldn't mind to get extra courses, to do some education on the side, and actually get better at what we are doing. And they were right on the money. So we would start with an introduction class, which would last a month. We would get to know one another. So there was the class of each month per year. I was from September 1992. And, when we would go and have drinks on Friday evening, the first question was, when we didn't know one another, which class are you from? So it was a nice opening to start the conversation. Of course, the second one would be, so where are you stationed? Because we were all going places. Now, I've seen a lot of companies back then, and also in the years that I've been working, I've seen a lot of companies too. And for those who have been following me for a while, you know that I've got two passions. And one is about speaking up, speaking out, sharing your story so you are heard, seen, understood, respected, and valued. Why is that so important? Because a lot of people actually are not aware that they don't listen to other people. And yes, I'm no exception to the rule. Depending on where my head is at, I either will be fully listening or I will be totally in my own world. happens to. But when I'm doing a coaching session, I'm there. And I have noticed that I actually do react to certain words too. So I can be working somewhere on a terrace, in the lobby of a hotel, and all of a sudden I hear a certain word, and that intention is there. And I'm listening in, like, hey, what are they talking about? And then, of course, there are so many conversations with other people who are either having a role like project manager or manager in a company, or who have to deal with management a lot, or who are actually in charge of the company. So they are the CEOs, they set it up. And it's so interesting to hear what's going on. So one of the things that still surprised me up till this day is that my brother is, well, not close to retiring. I think it's going to take another 10 years maybe. But he'll likely be part of that same company by the time he retires. Of course, the company has been taken over by other companies again and again and again and again, but still. And he has had the opportunity to grow along and study things. And so he does a lot of project management too, helps people get things started up. And I think it's kind of cool to be talking to my brother about stuff related to neurodivergency, for instance. So both of us were in the IT. He still is. I'm no longer in IT because I'm here coaching and giving training related to mindsets and all that stuff. And the only IT I actually worry about is doing stuff in Kajabi and every once in a while on WordPress. But that's about it. So, of course, I do know everything when it's related to the dangers. So what do you have to be careful of when it comes to scammers, for instance, and skimmers? So, those kind of things. And I know all about the contracts and what we can expect and what we cannot expect and actually might expect. So it's kind of cool what I've done and see how it actually relates to my current way of teaching and training and coaching, because a lot of it has to do with how do people react to where they are working, how they are living, how people are reacting to them. Now, last Saturday, something happened and it was kind of interesting, and it's got me thinking. Actually, I posted a few things about it on Instagram, and someone said to me, you are in the same line of work as I am. Or he said, I am in the same line of work as you are. I said, oh. He said, well, you are a coach, so you work with people and you get them to do things. Well, I'm a project manager and I get people to do things. So far, so good. And then we talked on. And this is the type that is actually hovering over people's shoulders, that if you can do more things, then he'll make you do more things. He'll tell you what else you can do. It didn't give me that warm, fuzzy feeling that I was talking about in the beginning. It gave me the opposite feeling, like, oh, here is a very controlling person. And there are a lot of people who at some point come in as a project manager, and no, I'm not talking about my brother here, or as an interim manager with the goal of making things more efficient. And that sounds so nice, but what I've seen in the past, well, in all those years that I actually was part of other companies, is that a lot of those times it was about stockholders, and actually just open a newspaper and see what they're talking about when it comes to margins and profits and what they have to do to increase profit. And the first thing you'll see is laying off people. And when it comes to services and you being a company that actually delivers to other people, I think that it is really important to think about what have you agreed on. And if you are very specialized in something and that's worthwhile, then you cannot just take people away just because, well, you need to get rid of people because you need to make more profit. And then, yeah, well, we'll see if they need someone. So what did they agree upon? But I've seen it lots of times that people who actually had the know-how are being replaced with people who are cheaper workforces because they have less experience. And that's where things happen. And we can see it nowadays. I mean, just look at the people who come to your home and fix things. There are the ones who know about how everything works. They know the lay of the land. They make sure there's excellent service. But those are usually not the most cheapest of people. They ask a little bit more because they have the experience. They give you the guarantee that things are done very well. And then there are those people who say, yeah, sure, but first of all, do they actually speak the same language? Because there are a lot of people who go to other countries, and that also is the same over here, who do not speak the language which is spoken within the country, but they are good at something, or at least that's what they say they are. And well, because there's a shortage, especially of manual labor, we want those people to come work. Until, of course, there's a misunderstanding when it comes to communication. And there we get back to it again, communication. And well, I've seen, if I look back in the past 40 years, how quality has been at the expense of more efficiency. We really don't need all those extra margins. And well, for those exceptional times that everything all of a sudden floods, yeah, well, that's a bit of a problem. And of course, the insurance companies have done the same thing. So they also say, well, it doesn't happen too often. We're going to get rid of it. And so the moment that there's extreme weather, for instance, if we're talking about people who know about gutters, about roofs, about painting and all that stuff, the good old-fashioned people with manual skills who know how to build houses and how to change things. When something happens, there's nowhere to go to. I mean, all of a sudden your house is flooded, and then what? Well, you can't go anywhere because, well, when we're talking about accidents having to do with nature, then of course the question is, are you still insured or not? And when it's the exception, usually we are not. So what I'm trying to say with all of this is that a lot has to do with profits and where people are. And when we talk about change in management, then that, of course, also has to do loads of times with profits to be more efficient. Of course, work has changed a lot. I mean, with the IT, more inventions are there. People need less of one and more of the other. And I do believe that a very good example of this was visible during Corona, when we had COVID. First of all, everything closed down. So a lot of stores closed and people weren't allowed to go inside anymore. So that's where web shops came in. But still, rent needed to be paid. So, and it wasn't for 1 month. It wasn't even for 1 year. It was way longer. And then there were no more festivals, no more concerts. And that meant that in that area, also the people who would do the construction for the stages and other stuff, they had no job either. So that became problematic. So a lot of those people nowadays, they are doing other jobs. And the industry that actually wants to do those festivals, they have a very hard time getting those people back to help them out. And sometimes with devastating consequences because they set something up and, well, the whole thing comes crashing down. That's not what we want. We want experienced people, but like I said again, where are those experienced people? Now, a lot of, for instance, when it comes to concerts and all those stuff, we're talking about seasonal workers. So with a little bit of luck, those seasonal workers can be hired again. But it's a very good example of how things can shift and how things can change. And then people have to think about, okay, so what is it that I can do, that I want to do, what I'm good at? And of course, the latter is a huge question because, well, if you specialize in one thing, from the get-go, even then the question still is it useful, or do we need to get a new education? And by that time, do you have a life, as in you are married or living together, you have your family, others are depending on you to do certain things. So do you actually have the time and the energy to start doing a new line of not only work, but also the education that's needed to do that job? And those are the things where things get a little bit difficult. Now, getting back to the whole freedom thing, what I was talking about when I talked with that one guy, and I've seen so many like him in the past. Well, he is one who arranges everything, makes sure that things go more smoothly, and then he's gone. What I've seen from a lot of these projects is that people come in, they are supposed to ask the users, as in people working there who use the system, what they actually want and what they need. And the question, of course, is again, are they heard? Then, of course, there are the suppliers who actually have to create something. So what are you buying? Are you buying a package which is already out there, so nothing can be changed? Or is it something that can be made according to what it is you want and need? And even then, if you once started up with very specific things, very specialized things, then it's very hard for a new company to take over those kind of things. And well, I can tell you, when you are on the receiving end, so you have to work with the systems and you get a completely new system to work with, and that takes up so much time and effort and energy, and not everyone is so happy with that. There are systems that were so easy for me, and there is one system that I saw throughout the big companies, and I was always like, why do people use this system? Well, I knew why, because they had great reports, but to enter all the stuff in there, oh my God, that was horrendous. But getting back to how work can be done. So getting back to COVID, a lot of people started working from home. That had its good sides, it had its bad sides, as in the good things were people had more freedom, so they didn't have to dress up, but they could start away without having brushed their teeth, and go start doing things. And I knew what it was like, because when I started at the beginning of this age, I got the opportunity myself to start working from home, and it was my choice whenever I wanted to come in and where I wanted to go. It was all up to me as long as I did my job. That's basically what was said, until, of course, new management came in, and then a whole different ball game. Also, they were stationed all over the country, and then they were centralizing, and then everything was in Amsterdam. And of course, everyone had to go to Amsterdam, and then clogged up, traffic jams, all those kind of things, all those things that you don't want. But during COVID, things changed, and people got the opportunity to work from home. Basically, it was the only way to get work done. So personally think that was a good thing. So nowadays I've seen that some companies have gone back to, okay, you need to be here every day again. Other companies say you need to be here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So those are the days when traffic jams are full force. And well, you can tell that there's more freedom ever since COVID. Now, the question, of course, always is, for the one who are on the side of management or who actually own the company, do people take advantage of it or not? So it's good to talk about certain things. It's not about having to be monitored 24/7 what you're doing, but it is about, okay, this is the assignment and is it working? Can you do what you've been told? And based on those kind of things, the communication, and do you know what it is you need to do? Do you know what is expected from you? That's part where I base this framework on. Well, actually, this framework was made way before COVID-19 in a different form. And just recently, I redid it again. So let me start by the first letter. The first letter is the F from focus. So it's important that everyone knows what they need to do. And in general, we have certain tasks that we need to do every day, but there will always be specific things that you need to do specifically that day and not another day. Whether it's because something is going on, there might be a project, something has been in the works for a while, and now it really needs to be done, something needs to be fixed. Maybe there are special activities going on, and there's, they want to promote something or anything else. So you need to know, like, hey, what is it that I need to do? What's expected from me? And well, say that you only have a certain amount of things to do and you have some time left, then, well, what is it that you're going to do next? So for instance, this week, and last week, we have the soccer games going on right now. So I'm talking about the European Championships for soccer games. And well, as a result, a lot of restaurants and terraces, they close early. I hear it all over, and they say, well, people go home quickly. Part of it has to do with certain companies having this fabulous idea that if you get a big screen and you put it on your terrace, then you have to pay a lot of money if a lot of people are watching. So since you don't know how many people are going to watch, and if you're going to make a profit, well, they don't buy the screen. So people want to see the soccer games and they go home. It's the way it is. So what do? And well, a lot of places actually closed early these days because of what was going on. So sometimes it was partially shutting down part of a terrace, and sometimes it was like, yeah, we're closing 1 or 2 hours earlier. So that was very specific when it comes to focus. But apart from that, I believe that it's good to have daily communication about certain things which are going on. And like, hey, people, keep this in mind. And if something is going on, that you're actually able to talk about it. But it has to do with especially the unexpected things. Now, then we have the R from roles. And that's who does what. So it's nice to specialize in certain things. On the other hand, you also want to have a backup. So if one person gets ill or wants to go on holiday, someone else can take over. So it's nice to actually have some people switch roles every now and then, or have certain people within a group. And so good about it is that you know what is expected from me, what can I expect from other people, what can we expect from the boss, what can the boss expect from me. So we all know what has been done. And the most important thing about all of this is that we don't do work that we are not supposed to do. And if we do that work, then we have to wonder, is this something that we love doing more than our work that we are hired to do? And when you're a business owner, are you focusing on the operational stuff because otherwise it doesn't get done? Or are you capable of leaving that in the capable hands of your employees and then actually go do the stuff that you need to focus on yourself, strategic things, tactical things? And that's why it's so important to know your role and make sure that where you're best at, that's where you actually do what you do best. And a lot of people, they might be able to do more or on a different level, but they haven't done it yet. So they're unfamiliar with it. And that's why they don't do it. Getting back to the big companies, I've seen so many times that, and this is one example, until this day, I still don't understand how they actually did it. So there were some departments who actually work with that one system I was talking about. And I didn't use that system very often, which was one of the reasons why I had so much trouble learning it. But they did nothing else than working with that system. But because they were at a certain level, someone in management, probably a temporary dude or dudess, has come up with the idea, well, let's just get rid of that whole layer in that skill when it comes to salary. And I was like, what? You need to leave? Why? Oh, because you are earning this much money per month. That's it. And as a result, all other people had to learn other stuff again, which of course took way more time. And then it's actually expensive time, because when you are doing something which takes you like a couple of hours or maybe more in comparison to the other one, which it takes half an hour, and you are earning 2 times as much compared to the other one who does it in half an hour, well, do the math. so, so yeah, it's good to know what are people doing. And again, when it comes to interim management and other stuff, then we have to figure out what is their goal, what is it that they want to do. Which brings me to the E from expectations. So just like we need to know who does what when it comes to roles, we also need to know how do we communicate with one another. And this can be from, do we have to go through multiple levels in order to be able to talk about something that's on our mind? Or how about when I started first, I talked about what are you focused on? What are the things that you are doing? And what is the assignment that you're actually having? And what I liked about one of the companies that I was working on at was that they actually said, okay, so this is our main goal for the company. So that means that the CEO and CFOs and, well, all the variations you've got have to do these things. So these departments, they get their directives from that's one who's in charge. And then there's this part of the company, and they take their task from whoever says, okay, this is what we are going to focus on. And so it went top down all the way. And for instance, I was a communication manager, so it was about the number of newsletters that I would write, the number of events that I would organize, those kind of things. And I could work with that. Of course, in other departments, other companies, I would pick up the phone. I would be on the service desk. I would help out people when they would call and they needed help. And of course, then we can say, okay, you need to be very efficient with all your phone calls because then we can do more. But I have noticed, and I don't know about you, that the more efficient people are, the less service based they are, as in, at some point they shut you off. And it's okay if people say, okay, we have other people waiting in line, but it's not okay when you can tell that they don't want to spend any time on you, or they are actually reading the lines from some program. This is what you need to say, instead of actually knowing stuff, which is what we talked about too. So expectations are so important. And that brings me to the next one, the E from environment. And then I'm going back up again. So environment for me has to be safe. Now, this is going to be so interesting because we've seen people going from having their own little corner, their own little room, sometimes just for one person. There would be a room for a department, maybe 4 to 6 people. And then there would be the open gardens, like really big ones. And you would have like 30, 50 people on the floor, and everyone could hear one another talking on the phone, doing stuff. You never knew if you would be sitting next to a window or not. So environment is a huge one. And now when we talk about safety, the safety also has to do with all the senses and the sensory input that we've got. And how easily can we say something about that? Well, one of the things I couldn't deal with was that I never knew where I would get to sit and if there was any room left. Also, I needed a special keyboard. I needed to adjust my table, and doing that over and over and over again, I was like, give me a fixed place, please. But even then, since I didn't work every day, other people would come in and it would readjust the whole thing. And then, well, there we would start over again. But we want an environment which is nice for people, where they can relax. It's not good to just work under artificial light. You actually want light which comes through the window. Of course, when it's raining, that's going to be a bit of a problem. But we also want to be able to talk to other people. Hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? So it's nice to actually be close to other people. But then again, I have worked in plenty of jobs where I would be driving and have meetings with other people who were stationed all over the country, whether we're talking about clients or about certain data centers or traffic centers. I would have to go there. So, and I honestly have to say, when I would get to such a place where it was more localized and there were not that many people, and sometimes they were very specialized, I felt way more at home. I liked it. But environment is also about being able to walk away and take a break. So early on, I said something about neurodivergence. So a lot of people in IT, they are neurodivergent. The first thing that I actually learned is, oh, those are the people who are perfectionists. They're very highly analytical. And well, they're not so good at figuring out what they can say and how they can communicate with other people. But I do know that at some point, when you keep on going and you don't set your boundaries, that actually can break up with you. And we need to figure out what can we do when people are doing too much. And sometimes we're talking about just taking a break. So for instance, working with screens all the time what we should do is every 1 hour, preferably, but at least every 2 hours, we need to get away from that screen for at least 10 minutes and close our eyes. And then we get to the controlling manager who says, hey, what are you doing? Why are you closing your eyes? Are you okay? Well, I'm closing my eyes because I don't want to look at the screen, because the screen is influencing my eyes, you know? And the older we get, the more that we actually experience this, because the muscles in our eyes are not that flexible anymore. So screens and all those things, they have an effect too. Also, the need for sunlight, so going outside, getting your vitamin D, going outside when we're talking about lunch, the possibility that it's done, or maybe a gym, so you can work out a little bit, or you go running to work or cycling and there is a shower. One of the things that I really loved was, it was kind of funny because I had this teacher who gave me Tai Chi. Unfortunately, he's no longer around. And at some point, he taught Tai Chi at the same place where actually I was working at. So that was nice. That was really cool. And I would practice Tai Chi a lot of times at that same place where I was working at. You remember, 30 to 50 people. And I would do my exercises because, later on we would have the Tai Chi again. And it was an excellent way to actually relax and get back to your senses and then start with refreshed energy. Now, those kind of things, are they available? Now, let's go just a step further when we talk about the environment, and then going back to expectations and roles and focus. Do you remember that I said something about how easily can you share things with your manager and then the manager above and, so many layers up? So if we're talking about small business owners, then you can pretty straight away talk to your boss. But when we're talking about big companies, that's of course a whole different ball game. And with every change, there's a different style in management. So if some managers have a military background, they will be very controlling. And those are the ones which will be hovering over you and will demand that you are in at the latest at, for instance, 9, no minute later, and that you stay till at least 4 or 5 and not 1 minute sooner that you go away. And they expect you to do certain things. And sometimes they cannot control you at all. So they go to the most basic of things to control you. And it gets confusing when other leaders, maybe team leaders, actually expect certain things as well, whereas the previous one didn't. So how does the line of communication actually work? What is expected from us? And when there's a rapid change in management, well, that's confusing at best, because where do you go to with your concerns? Where do you go to when you see things that do not add up? And, oftentimes things that do not add up actually can be at the expense of the company itself, because things are happening which are not supposed to be happening. And, well, we can, of course, wait and see. At some point, someone will say something and they will find out. I personally don't like that approach. Or you can say, I've seen this. Let's say it and make sure that it gets to the right person. So you want it to go someplace where people pay attention to it. But what if you're not allowed to talk to the person who is directly involved with it, and you have to do it through your own team leader and the one who's above it? And then, of course, you can wonder if the message actually comes through at all. And those are things which, when we talk about safety, but also about expectations and about roles and knowing what to focus on, which get so confusing. And well, there's this saying about all facing the same way. So in Dutch, we say our nose are headed in the same direction. And the goal is that we all know what to expect from everyone, that we won't get punished if we skip a layer, and that we feel free, that when we are aware of things, that we can go talk to someone and that actually does something about it. So a lot of times reorganizations don't work because of previous experiences. And then, of course, people don't have time and they don't want to listen. And, they don't. Well, time actually is one of the most important factors, because they have to do their normal job. And then, you want to change something. So when, where, how am I going to do this? So those are things like, okay, people, think about, how do you want people to address you? And recently I heard something and I thought that was so cool. Someone said, I've met a lot of people now, person who came in new. And I've talked to a lot of you, and I haven't talked to a lot of you. Well, if I didn't talk to you, that's on me. But I do want to talk to you. I want to get to know everyone. So he has about 100, 110 people to give direction to and to take care of. And I want you to come and meet me. Please come in. And I was like, oh, that sounds so refreshing. It actually made me think back about moments that, they wanted to know certain things that were going on. So a lot of us were invited to breakfast meetings or lunch meetings or dinner meetings, which was kind of cool, going to the Japanese, and then, gives you different experience. And it was nice to be heard and to actually be able to share, like, hey, this is what's going on. And the question, of course, is, but how much gets shared with you afterwards? And I've seen some weird things happening. So if you are invited once to have dinner with someone, then, well, I would expect that you can knock on that person's door more often when you have some ideas. But of course, the question is, do they have the time? Is that what they want? Or was the one time only invitation? So how are you going to deal with that? There are people who have no limits, who have no boundaries, so they'll knock on the other person's door whenever they see the chance for whatever topic they want to talk about. Well, that's of course not good. So then we get back to the expectations again. But most important, the environment needs to be safe. So it's not like, oh, your head is on the chopping block just because you skipped 5 layers to talk to. And also, it needs to be good when it comes to energy. And what I mean is, you need to be able to recharge, because those days are long days, and we don't only recharge during lunch. Actually, the opposite happens. So we have a break during lunch, but then we eat too much and then we get a sugar dip, a lunch dip, and then, okay, try and start to get back in what it is that you need to do. There are companies, big companies, who go as far as, oh, you need to do your laundry. Yeah, just give it to me and it gets done. And do you need to go to a GP? They actually have people on the premises who can actually help you out. And of course, when that's not the case, it's nice that you actually get the time to be able to do those things, to actually go to a physical therapist without getting all those questions. And maybe you'll catch up, for instance, doing stuff at home, or maybe you get a few hours because we're talking about medical circumstances. So those are things that when you start working somewhere, you want to know, what is it like? Would I like the colleagues? Could we get along? and just to get a feeling of, hey, what's going on. Now, having talked about that, let's go to the next one, the D for directions. And then we're talking about the company. So where is the company heading? In which direction? And I already talked about that when I talked about COVID and all the changes people were going through, and especially companies. So instead of going through the door and saying hello, it became more online and more packages. And well, I'm one of those people who actually likes to talk to other people and discuss, hey, what's going on? And there are other people who prefer to have packages sent to their house and then send it back again. And apparently there's still a profit to be made, maybe because people don't actually send it back. I don't know. But yes, those kind of things. Which direction are we heading to? When I talked about the changes in IT, there are major changes. I mean, when I started out, 3 gigabyte was bigger, wider than this Groom is. And now it's like this big on a thumbnail drive, and probably even smaller. There's way more that can be put on a thumbnail drive than just 3 gigabytes. So that's big difference. I mean, mainframes, we had entire units and entire spaces allocated for it, and then at some point you could just shove them under your desk. Those are very different things, and of course then we have to consider, where do we want to go, especially when we're talking about specializing, and then we talk about reorganizations again. So what are you doing best? So what do you leave up to others, and what do you keep doing yourself? You need to know which direction you're heading into. And then, of course, we are talking about inventions and new opportunities. And then we get back to the roles again, because who has the ideas? Is that business owners? Maybe there's an employee who has ideas. And does that person get the time and the support to actually go work on that? And who picks up when things are going the way they should? So knowing where a company is heading actually works really well. It also it helps people anticipate on the changes which are coming. So it's actually kind of nice if you already know, oh, it's what we can expect. We need to move. So yes, of course, people are going to talk about it, but you also can get adjusted to the idea. And maybe there are some new things, and they want people to actually say, hey, I want to participate in that new project. How cool would that be? But then, of course, do you have enough time for your normal work? So is there someone else who can pick up on what you normally are doing? And what if that project is over and done with? Can you get back to what you used to do? So directions are very important because they tell you what you can expect when it comes to your role. It also tells you what you need to focus on during the day. But it also gives you something new and exciting to look forward to. And well, that's what we need when it comes to our brain. Our brain wants something new. We don't want to do the same thing every day again and again and again. So it's good to also think about, hey, where can I go to? Then when we talk about the O, we go to opportunity. And basically that has to do with the previous thing I just said. So what if you want to specialize in something? What if you want to start doing something else? So there are people who start coaching people on the job. They might be in IT, but they start coaching people. So they want to go into a new direction. So are you capable? Are you allowed to actually do so? What if you want to work a few days less? Is that opportunity there so you can focus on something else? What if you want to learn other stuff which you might not use specifically in the company, but you want to do something outside of the company? Are you allowed to actually do it? How does one influence the other? And maybe you actually get better because of it. And one thing is for certain, there's no such thing as boredom when you actually get to do one thing one day and something else the other day. Of course, it can also create confusion. So it depends on what you want. And of course, which opportunities are there in your own workplace where you are. So what can you do? But it's nice to actually be able to talk about certain things. And I remember that one of the companies I started working at, they said, well, if you want to learn Spanish, you can do that. So I work in IT and I can get budget to learn Spanish. That's what you're saying. Yeah, that's what we're saying. Okay. Well, I never learned Spanish, but at one of the companies I did do something was English, which was kind of nice. Last but not least, the M for mandate. So when we talk about doing certain things, you want there to be trust. You want there to be agreements. If you get told, go work on that specific project or go work with those customers, then it's nice if you actually get the trust which comes with it and also the authority which comes with it. So you can actually make decisions instead of hearing, no, you cannot do that. You need to talk to your team leader or to your manager or whoever is at the wheel. And well, the question, of course, is, but what if you want to do something else? You want to explore new territory? How much support are you going to get? And that's why I'm talking about mandate, as in what are you allowed to do? Now, with mandate also comes guidance. So I think personally that if you give someone a certain new task, but you don't explain how it works, so the person is eager to do it, but they actually don't know anything about it, and you see them falling flat on their face, then you are supposed to help them out. And of course, you can say falling flat on your face is the quickest way to learn things. That's how we did it in the past. But you could also say, hey, I'm here. And if you want some guidance, then please come over and ask me for it so I can help you out. I cannot promise you I can help you out 24/7, but we can talk, say 10 minutes or half an hour or a couple of moments per day or during the week and talk about what is it you need. And I might be able to give you some extra assistance or have you go to a certain course where you can learn certain things. But you don't want people to just go do the thing and then see that they're struggling and not supporting. I believe personally that having people struggle is a waste of time. So if you like to figure out things out for yourself, sure. If you're allowed to do so, why not? But if you want to learn something new and you do need some guidance, there is nothing more annoying than trying it, not succeeding, and then it's taken away. And we don't want that. So all combined, this is my Freedom Formula worksheet. I'm going to make sure that pretty soon it's actually something like handout, and if you want to, when you sign up, you can actually get that handout. And of course, there's way more involved because with every point, every direction, we can talk about how this works in your company. So there's also some coaching involved. But just thinking about those aspects already can make such a big difference in how you run your company. And well, if there is one person who is in the same place, whereas all the other people are constantly coming in and out, then maybe that one person can actually keep an eye on things. And that's why I believe that that framework is so important, especially when you have a small company and you haven't really figured out how things are working. Then, watch this video again and go to the part where it's like, okay, this is what was most helpful to me, and write down how do you want to see things. And when you get that worksheet, there is the possibility actually to write down how you look at focus and go a step further. What does this mean for my employees? What does that actually mean for me? Because it's not only about the other, it's also about yourself, of course. So the entire goal is that people get more enthusiastic, including you, because being the one in charge isn't always easy, just as being the one who is not in charge and is just watching what's happening all around them, can be very frustrating too. But the whole goal of a framework is that you actually feel like you can wind down, you can relax, and as a result, you don't lose that much energy. Hopefully, you can actually recharge during the day. That's why I talked about the environment too. There's something called snoezel spaces. So snoezelen is actually a Dutch word. Snoezelen is a little bit like this, like hugging, and a little bit like sleeping. So that's snoezelen. So it helps you to get your brain to calm down and just not being bothered by all the lights. It's they have spaces with certain colors of lights and certain colors of fabric, which actually can really help you to calm down. And such a break can actually do wonders when it comes to actually getting back to the stuff that you need to do and focus on again. And so if you have less stress at work, whether you are the one managing it or you are the employee, you have more energy and also more time left in your personal life, which is good because your family will immediately notice how you come back. Are you all stressed and you still need to wind down, or are you already like, oh, I'm sort of okay? Maybe you take the time traveling from home, from work to home to actually wind down. But what if you're stuck in a traffic jam, And it's also about more trust at work. So trust you can give as a manager to your employees, but also as the employee given by your team leader, your manager, whoever is in charge. And if that means that sometimes you want to take some time off to do other stuff, that you are also capable and allowed to do so, instead of, no, this is the time that you need to work, so you're going to do this. And then I refer back to COVID again. We have learned so much during the time that people had to work from home. Then instantly people had to, trust issues. You couldn't come over. I mean, you couldn't put a camera on everyone. It didn't work that way. So you had to trust that everything was going on the way that it should. And maybe it's a little bit going back and forth, getting used to what works and what doesn't work. But in the end, you will get there. So all of this combined, if you want a worksheet, let me know. You can always sign up for the Change Challenge. So go to ladylexie.com/sign up for change. And if you do so now, say in this week, then I'll make sure that you also get the worksheet, which is related to freedom. If you have questions or comments, please leave them behind so I can get into it next time around. And for now, enjoy your weekend. And if you have to work, have a good time at work. But don't forget to communicate what it is you want and need.